This is the audio log of Medical Supervisor Peter Raleigh, dated November 1st, 2145. Patient 0432, a Private Steve Jensen of the UAC Darklight Armor Corps Division, expired today, 1543, of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. This is approximately 110 hours after his return from expeditionary missions. Private Jensen was suffering from paranoid delusions and full-blown dementia. Treatment was unsuccessful. He was the last surviving member of his outfit. 4 other squad mates, who also came back with Private Jensen, expired from injuries suffered on that last mission shortly after their return. Before his death, Private Jensen was heard screaming in both English and other languages. Something about demon hordes feasting on our souls. The other language was later discovered to be Aramaic. Due to security concerns in the area, I've secured some armament in my office.
Making progress, Marine? Your journey is futile. You will die, and your soul will be mine. Oh, thank God. You're not one of them. I thought everyone else was gone. I was part of this. I helped them. The madness of opening to another dimension. Look, we don't have much time. We let it through. The evil, the protective stabilizer on the portal just failed after Betruger took the device. It was an artifact we had found in the ruins. He took it into the portal, and hell followed him out. You have to help me first. I'm going to try to get the teleporter systems running again. The areas are destroyed around us, so it's the only way through this part of the complex. You need to find me a working plasma inducer. It's all I need to get the teleporter working. You can look for it in operations. I have a security clearance. I'll unlock some doors for you. There. We don't have a lot of time. Please hurry.
Decontamination process started. Decontamination complete. Have a nice day. Decontamination process started. Decontamination complete. Have a nice day. Decontamination process started. Decontamination complete. Have a nice day. Decontamination process started. Decontamination complete. Have a nice day. records active. Access denied.
Dated November 2nd, 21. Patient 0432, Steve Jensen of the UAC Dark Light Armor Corps Division, expired yesterday at 15:43. Private Jensen was suffering from paranoid full-blown dementia. Treatment was unsuccessful. Initial psychiatric interviews suggested only mild psychosis with speech, motor activity and thought processes within normal range, paranoia being the only psychotic element directly evident. Reference interview G8A. Private Steve Jensen, October 18th, 21:45.
UAC psychologist Dr. Hooper interviewing Steve Jensen, male, age 27. Steve, can you talk to me about the last few weeks, please?
I don't want to talk.
Well, I'm here to help you, Steve.
I've tried talking. They think I'm crazy. You think I'm crazy.
Halon systems deactivated.
Much time. Get that plasma inducer, quickly.
Decontamination process started. Decontamination complete. Have a nice day. Decontamination process started. Decontamination complete. Have a nice day.
Audio log for Phil Wilson, medical technician, Delta Labs, October 20th, 2145. Today I witnessed the third test of the teleport in the 3 weeks that I've been here. Volunteers are becoming harder and harder to come by, and it isn't difficult to see why. They all come back screaming like loons about demons, pools of blood. Real fire and brimstone stuff. At first I wasn't paying much attention, just doing my job, but the last was Robert Clayton. Now, I met him my first...
As requested, the following is my initial feedback on my first trip through the portal. Private First Class Frank Cinders, dated October 15th, 2145. I don't know exactly where to begin. Obviously, I survived the first trip and feel no worse for the wear. I'm not feeling any of the symptoms reported by the others who have gone in before me, but I'm at a point where I'm still trying to process everything. Thankfully, the place looks deserted and devoid of any life, but the flames and heat and stench of the place, it smells of death, decay, and burnt flesh. Tomorrow we're going back in with some of the eggheads. Science that starts securing control positions and expect to start sending out the mapping droids at the same time. I must admit on a personal note that I've got a really bad feeling about this. I don't understand what we do there or what we hope to prove. BFG Cinders, signing off. As requested, the following is my initial feedback on my first trip through the portal. Private First Class Frank Cinders, dated October 15th, 2145. I don't know exactly where to begin. Obviously, I survived the first trip and feel no worse for the wear. I'm not feeling any of the symptoms reported by the others who have gone in before me, but I'm at a point where I'm still trying to process everything. Thankfully, the place looks deserted and devoid of any life, but the flames and heat and stench of the place. It smells of death, decay, and burnt flesh. Tomorrow we're going back in with some of the eggheads, science division, to start securing forward positions, and we expect to start sending out the mapping droids at the same time. I feel I must admit on a personal note that I've got a really bad feeling about this. I don't understand what we're doing there or what we hope to prove.
Dated November.
PFC Cinders, signing off.
Psychotic element directly reference.
Decontamination process started. Decontamination complete. Have a nice day. Decontamination process started. Decontamination complete. Have a nice day.
Excellent. That will get the teleporter working again. But you don't have much time. You're going to need to teleport across the containment chamber. It's the only way through this part of the complex. Head into the chamber and initiate the sequence on the machine. I'll take care of the rest. I'm not going with you. Good luck. But before you go, I want you to take something. It's a journal I made about the experiments. Those things. It's all there. It'll explain everything. Give it to someone so this never happens again.
Decontamination process started. Decontamination complete. Have a nice day. Systems activated. Teleportation will commence in T-3, 2, 1.
You surprised me. I'm glad to see you. I would have hoped they would have sent more than just one guy, though. I've been studying one of the specimens we brought back to see if there's something physiological that would be a weakness, a way to stop them. I found nothing so far. Haven't had enough time. I'm gonna stay here and keep looking. It's the only thing I can do. There are combat supplies in the storage cabinet in the next room. The code is 624. I hope you can use it.
The Delta Complex Stasis Chambers. This facility was constructed to house and study the extra-dimensional beings, which were recovered during some of the first teleporter tests originating from Delta Level 3. While little is known about their native environment, the specimens appear to be carbon-based life forms with extremely high heat tolerances. The epidermal tissue is extremely resilient to abrasion or incision, which has complicated internal studies. Observational studies have shown incredible strength and agility, as well as the ability for some specimens to manifest and control cohesive plasma masses. The method by which these plasma masses are created is yet unknown. It is believed that the specimens possess a rudimentary intelligence and social structure, as was demonstrated during the first tragic experience. While the cost in human life has been acquiring these specimens, we hope that one day complete genomic mapping and begin to answer the many questions we have about these entities.
Hello? Is anyone there? Hello? Someone up there? Please unlock the service hatch. Oh, no! No, God, no! Oh, God! Ah, ah!
What you see before you is a relic codenamed U1, or simply Soul Cube. It was discovered in 2104. Welcome to the Delta Complex Stasis Chambers. This facility was constructed to...
My name is Ian McCormick, and I'm a research specialist stationed on Mars, working for the UAC. My primary job is, or rather was, to assist Dr. Malcolm Petruger in a variety of experiments, though for the past year we've been focusing almost exclusively on...
This is the audio log of Research Director Larry Bowman, October 19th, 2145. I've been examining the glyphs on the cube-shaped artifact, which some are calling the Soul Cube, and combined with previous research data, it is my conclusion the device is some sort of weapon. If the power fluctuations would stop long enough for me to get the linguistic CPU online, then I am sure my theory would be verified. You know, I'll take this opportunity to lodge yet another complaint about the continual power problems. Living in this godforsaken base is bad enough without having to watch the lights flicker constantly. It's just... Well, never mind. Back to the task. What I've decided to seems that when one has possession of the artifact, if one inflicts damage or possibly kills another being, it extracts power from that event somehow. Now, once a certain threshold has been reached, the artifact has the ability to kill anything you attack with it. How you attack it is frankly not certain, indicating that the artifact is autonomous in some way. To date, I've only deciphered about two-thirds, give or take, of the markings, but my initial glance at the rest of it indicates it harbors some far greater power. As you know, at this time we have not seen any reaction from the cube, and it has withstood scanning, vibration, or other tests beyond...
What you see before you is a relic codenamed U1.
I suspect that just like the civilization that constructed it, its capability...
was discovered in 2104, located in a geographic region where UAC researchers have unearthed evidence of a long-lost civilization. We know nothing of this civilization other than they existed, and that they were all wiped out in some type of cataclysmic event, according to what we've been able to decode from stone tablets found throughout the ruins. What clues we have been able to piece together reveal...